Welcome to Marketing Monday. On today's episode, we have such an exciting launch because this new data report from Welcome Home has just dropped. It's brand new, and
Brandon.
we have two people who worked on it right here on the show. We're gonna go into what's working, what types of marketing and sales are working, and what the actual numbers of occupancy and stuff like that show. Because Welcome Home has the proof. So it's not what marketers are telling us what's going on, it's what the numbers are actually showing. So a bit of some surprises in here and some very interesting, useful stuff. But Chris, hey, how you doing today?
Doing good. I love what you said. When I tell people about the dynamic of what makes marketing helpful, I talk about
Yeah.
fact and feeling, and you just touched on that, right? Those two buckets, like it feels good, cool, but is it actually, accomplishing something successful? So it's nice today. We're going to be talking about the facts behind what we've been doing and what you can be looking for in that. So super excited for today's show.
Yes, and we have a very special guest who's going to come on in just a second. But first, Chris, we have a surprise for you.
I'm excited
Hey,
for the
Jada.
surprise.
You haven't seen it yet. Jada, could you roll that beautiful footage?
I love it. I love it.
Isn't that great? You're a cartoon now. It looks just like you do.
I made it. My hair looks good. I hope that I always have that good of hair.
One day we'll just have the cartoons host and we'll be behind the scenes in our pajamas.
It'll be like a cartoon bot. It's AI, and we just tell the cartoon what to say. We give it a script.
Yeah. Nobody will know any different. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Hey, who are we bringing on today, Chris? It's our very, very special guest.
We are so excited today to have Maggie with us. She is the VP of Customer Insight. Really what that means is she is the person responsible for just understanding and knowing all of the data from Welcome Home, what's happening under the hood with the platform. And so Maggie and I worked really hard past couple of months here on just data mining and understanding all the trends, the things that have been happening. Maggie and her team responsible for just understanding what we're looking at. So excited to have her on the show today. She is our featured guest. And Maggie, welcome to Marketing Monday.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here.
We're so glad to have you hang out with us. And I saw that the report that we're about to talk about, the 2022 year in review, it just dropped. So right before the show, I took a glance through it and I have so many questions. It has such great insight into it. I can't wait to delve into it more. We're going to put a link up later in the show where everybody can download it for free. It's totally free. So you can get access to it too. But let's talk, Maggie. This is the first time that Welcome Home has done a year in review like this. Is that correct?
Yes, this is our first big annual report, and we really see it as the jumping off point for us from a data standpoint. The goal is to move forward, have an annual report every year, have quarterly reporting, and continue to develop our insights offering in the product and, from a case study of best practice standpoint as well. So this is just the beginning for us, but we're really excited. I mean, the team is incredibly invested in providing data support for the industry, especially given the challenges we're up against today. So, very excited to take this first step. And of course, always listening for feedback as we develop this functionality as well. And we know it's really important.
What kind of communities are represented in this report and how many?
Sure. So the report is based on Welcome Home's set of data, more than 1,000 communities included across assisted living, independent living, and memory care. And we look at the trends over 2022 and start to unpack, what were the differentiators of success? What are the trends in terms of the benchmarks for the industry today, so that our operators have something to compare to as they set their strategy for 2023.
Awesome. And I know that So this is your first time doing this, and I imagine a lot of companies have, no matter what they specialize in, they have all kinds of expertise in their departments. They have data here and there and everywhere, and it all stays in-house. And you're releasing it out to the public for free. What brought you to the point of deciding to make this data report?
Sure. So, one of our founders, John, he had this idea for a long time. It's been something that we've been hoping to share since the beginning of the company. We sit on a vast amount of data across operators today, but we really wanted to develop the ability to share data in a way that was scalable, repeatable, so that our customers can rely on us and, and use it as part of their day-to-day process. So, we're just really excited, and I'm hopeful that the data is helpful and that we continue to develop this offering in stride with our customers and get feedback from them as we go. Did that answer the question?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
And thank you for the shout outs from the chat from everyone that's already taken a look. There's two of our friends in there that have, I know because I'm tracking this, as the marketer involved, and I'm so excited. This is, a big just piece of content that we're excited. Like you said, Leigh Ann, we want to share these types of things. One of our goals at WelcomeHome is to make this data more transparent so that people can recognize, like, where am I at, locate themselves, in alignment with other communities, other regions. There's different ways that we're kind of slicing and dicing the data so that you can, look at it from your unique perspective, but also like what's happening in the greater industry. What are those trends that are taking place? So again, thanks for the shout outs from the comments. If you have questions, by the way, as we're going through this, Leigh Ann and Maggie are going to keep asking, each other questions. I'm going to kind of pay attention to the comments. If it's a terrible question, I'm going to say no. But if it's a good question, we're gonna let it fly. So yeah, keep on asking questions. We appreciate that.
Data makes decisions easier. That is very true, Steve. Hey, Maggie. So overall, before we get into some really detailed questions that I'm dying to get into, do you see some overall key trends in the industry popping out?
Sure. So, our goal was to take a look back at 2022 just to see what was happening in a couple key areas. So one, obviously occupancy. We're starting to see a rebound towards pre-pandemic occupancy, which is a great sign, but there's more going on than just that. And first of all, occupancy was not felt equally across care types or regions, and we can dive into that data as well. But beyond that, we also see wins in occupancy looking very different for communities that are doing different types of work. So when we look at the sales funnel, how many new leads, how many tours, how many move-ins, what do conversions look like? There are some takeaways we can take from the report in terms of what are the winners doing really well that we can adopt at other communities to drive additional success. And then beyond that, the big area of interest, at least for me, is looking at the lead source landscape for 2022. And, it should be no surprise to many of us, but online and aggregators today make up a significant portion of inbound leads. And it's a new reality that operators and communities will have to get used to and learn to manage. And we have some ideas on what that might look like when we dive into the data a little bit more deeply.
It's really interesting to come at this for the first time post-pandemic. I'm not sure if we can say post-pandemic, but you know what I mean?
I feel the same way. It's that I'm like, am I allowed to say that yet? I think so. If SNL is making fun of some of the things, I'm like, it's definitely a tread carefully situation. Yeah,
it is. It's like, if you have a different term we can use, chime in the comments. Let us know what we should be saying. But it's interesting because you mentioned the digital leads and all that, and that kind of ramped up during the pandemic. Whatever we're saying, however we're saying that. But let's talk about occupancy, because you mentioned that a second, and you said that you're seeing some differences in both in region and in types of communities. So I know we get all sorts of occupancy numbers out there, but this is not what communities are reporting to you or their numbers. This is what's actually in their, there's no exaggeration or anything.
Yes, so this is the real data based on the communities we have on WelcomeHome today. So I'll go ahead and start with looking at the trends by region. So if we look across the year, we saw the strongest gains from the West and the Northeast. To me, this is unsurprising, at least for the Northeast. There was a pretty adverse reaction to the pandemic in the Northeast, and we're starting to see a rebound from that, which is really exciting. The Northeast ended at 80% occupancy, which is great, and the West at 79. And then we see a little bit of a slower return for the South and the Midwest, both leveling out in the mid 70s for occupancy at the end of the year. So, as you're thinking about your portfolio of communities and you're seeing some differences, maybe region might have something to do with it. It's all about who you're comparing yourself to.
That is interesting. And does it vary by type of community as well?
It does. So if we look at our customer base, and I will say that we have a large share of assisted living communities, we saw assisted living end around 77% over 2022, and memory care ballpark same number, and then independent living around 82%. So a stronger rebound for independent living than the other care types. What I will say is, again, similar to how the Northeast, had a pretty adverse reaction to the pandemic, it was, as one should. Independent living is optional for many people. So when the pandemic hit, people pulled away from that the fastest. And now that, seniors are becoming more comfortable with senior living again, we're seeing a stronger rebound in independent living, which is very exciting.
That is exciting, because we were wondering when and if that was going to happen, since it is optional. So that's good to hear. Can we pause for a second here? We've talked a lot about WelcomeHome and the data and all that. We haven't really said what WelcomeHome is. And so I have a feeling probably most 90% of the people watching know WelcomeHome. But could you give me a quick overview? Chris, I guess, would be the...
Yeah, absolutely. So WelcomeHome is a senior living specific CRM. And so our goal is to be best in class CRM that focuses on the senior living aging services industry. And so really, some of the things that Maggie already mentioned, when John, one of our two co-founders, started WelcomeHome, the goal was to listen first and learn some of the needs in the CRM world, because there is, just that unique dynamic between almost that like parent-child, where you've got these communities, the way the teams are set up. And so some of the traditional CRMs just don't work in our setting. And so that's where, this vision for WelcomeHome as a CRM came into being, that we would really just start from the ground up, making things as quick and efficient, as easy as possible for team members, so that they don't have to spend all this extra time learning the platform. They can just go in, use WelcomeHome right out of the box, be able to download all of these, standard things that should be in your CRM, and it just works, right? And so that's who we are, WelcomeHome Software as a CRM for senior living.
Thank you, Chris. I just kind of threw that at you, and you nailed that. Nicely done.
I better be able to answer that question.
Right. Oh, man. All right. So let's move into a little bit more of marketing and sales, and what you're seeing is working, what's not working, what to expect. Because a lot of times, if you're in marketing and sales and you're working in one community or at one company, you think you're probably doing okay, but you don't know. And also, it seems like you have to, should it really take this long to get a move in? And how many times should you contact somebody? You have answers on what's the average to look for, right?
Sure. And, the sales director job can be a super isolating experience, to your point. Like, you don't necessarily have the data to know what the correct benchmark should be. So, I'll walk you right through what we're seeing, starting with the sales funnel. Across the industry, on average per month, we saw 38 new leads every month, translating to 10 new tours, so first-time tours, translating then again to roughly 3.7 move-ins. So these are the numbers across the board, and the report has additional data by care type and by some of the customer segments we dove into as part of our reporting as well. When you think about the sales, process and performance as a whole, you mentioned, how long should it take me to sell somebody? You mentioned, how much work do I need to do? We do have numbers on that as well. So again, across the board, across the industry data set that we have, we're seeing more than 100 activities per move-in on a length of sales cycle that's more than 150 days. So it does take time, and it does take a lot of work. What we do see later on in the report is, of course, this varies by care type. It also varies by the type of lead you're working with. So is that person coming to you through an online source? Is that person coming to you through a referral? Nurturing those different types of leads looks very different. And so there are some very tactical strategies our operators can take away in the report as well on thinking more about that.
Wow. And just the thought of it takes more than 100 activities. Whew, whew. And I think that should give you kind of strength and confidence to keep plugging away. Cause you're not failing. You're just keep plugging away.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I think a lot of this report, I mean, of course, we want to give data to provide benchmarks, but we also want to validate the hard work that is being done. I mean, it's hard to drive occupancy. It's hard to have strong conversions, but part of our goal at Welcome Home is to take the best practices that live out there that we see and share that knowledge, because ultimately it's a, rising tides lift all boats mentality for us. We really want all of our customers to succeed. So that's the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like the comment that Christy's making in the chat, talking about, that increase in activities, those, all the touch points that from pre-pandemic to now over the past several years, like that, absolutely, that shift certainly taking place. And I know Maggie referenced, lead sources look a little bit different now than they did 3 to 5 to 10 years ago. And so just recognizing pandemic certainly had a role in that, but there are other things that are taking place too. And so that's the goal of, year in review as well. It's like, this is just the first one, so that we can now continue to say what's on that trend basis, like what continues to happen and how can we help teams understand what's working now that may have been working in the past, but it's shifted. So I think it's just good to recognize, like, that's a lot of this is not concrete. It's just saying at this moment, here's what we're seeing, so that we can continue to identify what's happening along the journey.
Sure. And to follow up again on Christy's comment, this is total activities in Welcome Home. If you have Welcome Home, you're very familiar that it's a very customizable tool. You're able to categorize as many different types of activities as you want. So activities for us includes a very broad swath of things that you can categorize or log. When you drill down into some of the more core activities like calls, text, emails, tours, there are some things that are more worth your time than others when it comes to driving a move-in. Things like having a greater share of calls versus text or emails. Things like focusing in on planning, other takeaways that you can see in the report that can be tactical guidance for your sales teams.
One of the things that comes out in the report is planning. It says planning is important. What does that entail?
Sure. So in Welcome Home, you're able to log a broad a set of activities. Planning is one of them that some of our communities and operators specifically track. And when I say some, I actually mean very few. If you look at the full set of activities logged over 2022, less than 1% of those activities were planning. And again, planning could mean different things to different operators, but we interpret this as some deliberate, thoughtful time spent on thinking about a prospect and how you're going to manage that prospect. Oftentimes this happens, right before you bring someone in for a tour and you think through what that tour should include. When you look at the communities and operators that are very good at taking this thoughtful time to plan, they have higher occupancy on average and they have better conversions, particularly when you look at that tour to move-in phase. So what this tells me is, small changes go a really long way. It doesn't have to be an hour and a half worth of planning. It could be 15 minutes. But if you know that a prospect that is coming in loves to bake and you're able to, orchestrate a baking activity at the community when that person is touring, that prospect will have an incredibly different perception of your community than what they might have had you not remembered that. So just, thinking through some of these smaller details can make a huge difference.
That gives you a lot to think about, because another way I can also see it is planning is a lot of thinking. And when you're thinking, it doesn't look like you're working. It looks like you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs and so to have that permission to be like, no, look, if you do more of this, it turns out better for you. That's really helpful, I think, for people to know. thinking is working, as writers will tell you.
Thinking can be painful at times. I acknowledge that as well.
True. Yeah. We could do a whole episode on that. Walk, go for a walk. That's still working.
Oh yeah. Thoughtful walk.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Open up your brain. Then, did you see, okay, if you look at your communities that had the biggest growth over the year, did you see any trends that jump out at you?
Yes. And I actually think this is fascinating and one of my favorite parts of, launching this first report. So we wanted to see if there were any groups of communities in our data set that we could specifically focus in on and look at their behavior versus some of the others. And in the report, we're calling this the dynamic group. The dynamic group is a group that had significant month-over-month occupancy gains over 2022, not including lease-ups. So these are people who are just pushing occupancy every month. And what are they doing that's different from everyone else? Thinking about the sales funnel first, they had more leads than all of the other groups. They had stronger conversions, particularly at the tour to move-in stage. So they're doing some of that planning. They're really being deliberate about how they're spending their time with prospects. And then when you look at activities, so things like calls, texts, and emails, not only are they doing more of those core activities, but they're doing them faster. They have a faster speed to lead, and they're doing it efficiently. They're only spending 5 more minutes than the average in their CRM. What that tells me is they're being very deliberate about their tools and systems. They're using automated emails. They're using bulk emailing. They have the mobile app downloaded, being very clear and specific about what the expectations are, and then just driving towards them. I think it's a really encouraging story because it just shows that it doesn't take that much more. It takes being thoughtful about it.
Yet again, those thinking. Hey, Chris, I want to let you chime in on the lead sources conversation because you have a background in marketing and can speak.
Yeah, absolutely. So, talking about where these leads are coming from today, I think it was fascinating. I know we were having some great conversations around this, Maggie, the percentage, the volume of leads coming from online and aggregators, and what that translated into in terms of move-ins, and then also talking about, length of stay versus sometimes, the referral sources look and feel a little bit different initially, but then we were able to show, wow, on the other side, their length of stay. So maybe unpack that for everybody a little bit, some of the trends that you saw there that we were able to recognize.
Sure. So I think anyone who sat in the sales director's seat in the past couple of years will feel how many leads are coming from aggregators and online today. When we look at the inbound share of leads, aggregators and online together make up more than 75% of total leads that come in. When it comes to move-in, they're making up almost half. So significant portion of inbound and move-ins. But when you look at actual, the conversions, so thinking, of aggregator leads that come in, how many of those eventually move in? For aggregators, 4%. For online, it's 6%, still pretty low. You look at different sources like referrals, closer to 20%. So there are a couple different messages to take away from this, especially as you start to look into how you might approach working with a lead from an aggregator or online versus, a referral lead source. In the report, we show that it takes a lot more work to get an aggregator or an online lead into the door, and it takes a lot more work in a very short sales cycle. So it feels very intense for, a couple months, but you're really working hard to get in touch with that person, to offer them support, to beat out the competition, right? And then they stay, but they stay for a little bit less than a year. If you compare that to professional and non-professional referrals, much fewer activities per move-in. So 18 to 20 versus 90 to 180. And the length of sales.
That's a little different, right? That's a little
it's significant. And, but the sales cycle is very long. And, there are pros and cons to both of these different approaches. But the takeaway for me is having a clear idea of what your strategy is and what you are trying to do with your sales teams is more important than ever, because it takes a very different approach to moving in different types of leads. If you want to have a lot of move-ins from aggregators, that means you need to enable that. The same story is true for online. If you want to be more deliberate about pulling in move-ins from referrals, they have a very long sales cycle, so you have to have a very steady pipeline. You just work with these types of leads differently, and because of that, you have to have a clear sense of what your strategy is.
Yeah, my dog wants to chime in, and she agrees. She totally agrees. Well, gosh, I'm trying to think. Is there any? I feel like we could just keep going. Everybody's just going to have to download the report and read and read and read. It's great information. It's really digestible. It's very visual, easy to get through. But what are there any final thoughts or anything you want to add, Maggie, as we close out?
Yeah, I think going through the process of developing this first report, a lot became clear, but something that has sat with me is data adoption has never been more important, in that, we have operators that are adopting data in very different ways, but ultimately it is difficult to make, strategic decisions, data-backed decisions, if you don't have a clear sense of the expectations around data adoption at your communities and have measurable goals in place for your sales directors to work against. And, the data that we give you guys is only good as the data that we get from your teams. And it's a critical enabler for success over the next year, particularly as we think about some of the challenges we're up against with staffing. Learning a new tool is hard. So take advantage of the CSMs we have at WelcomeHome, of the training we have at WelcomeHome, of reports like this, to set goals and strategies that will help your teams get up to speed faster. Similarly, we're experiencing margin compression in the industry today. So, take a look at your historical lead sources and see what's worked for you in the past, so you can be more efficient about your spend in the marketing space as well. I think there are a lot of ways that data can help you pull together a strategy for success in 2023. And we're really excited about it. We're continuing to develop tools for our customers to really use data in an easy and approachable way. So we're always listening and happy to get feedback. So please reach out if you have questions or, generally just ideas for the next round. We're here.
Maggie and Chris, you're a lot of people who know WelcomeHome may not know either one of you with this great big data that you just delivered. Chris, you've only been there for a month, is that right?
I think I started mid-December, so it's been a couple of months now.
2 months, yeah. And then Maggie, how did you get to WelcomeHome and when? Because it feels like both of you have been there forever. You're just like pros at it.
It feels like it. I started in mid-October. I come to WelcomeHome from a background in management consulting at Bain & Company, where my whole job was, harnessing massive amounts of data to drive strategy and drive growth at some of the largest, at some of the Fortune 500 companies you see on the news today. So this is my wheelhouse. It's something I find super exciting, and it feels so good to be doing it in a space where the people are so invested in taking care of each other and really innovating and driving the industry forward. It's been wonderful, being at WelcomeHome with this team, but also great interacting with people in the market. So, I'm enjoying it a lot. And again, we want to hear from you all as we develop our data offerings. So please reach out. We're more than happy to listen and excited to go on this journey with you.
Yeah, shout out to Maggie. I just encourage everyone that is, listening to this webinar today, connect with her on LinkedIn. She's definitely a vital part of who we are at WelcomeHome. And she's also new to the aging services space, but has also, fallen in love with what we do and the things that we're involved in. So excited to get her connected in the greater community. She's going to be sharing on this topic more as we kind of move through the year, as we continue to develop these different benchmarks. So yeah, definitely connect with her. Final little, Steve jumped in and said, question, why is it harder? Not entirely sure what the it is, but I think the question happened in the middle of talking about lead sources, how much activity each one takes. And I think my hot take on that, Steve, is really it just comes down to all of us in going through this transition. You have people that are learning how to communicate through different channels. They're There's learning that's taking place. And so I'm interested to see, does that activity number stay as high moving forward? I don't know. We're gonna measure it, and we're gonna see if people get more efficient in communicating with people that are coming through different channels. So stay tuned for more data. That's my hot take on it being difficult or easy.
Beautiful. Now I can't wait for the next episode. Ooh, more data, please.
Right?
I mean, it's coming. We have so many projects underway. I mean, Chris mentioned quarterly reporting, but we're also, people have loved the lead source data. We're going to dig into that more, share best practices, spotlight some of the customers we have that are doing really well in some of these areas. So stay tuned. I mean, we are pumped and we are churning through it.
Who knew data could be so fun? We did, but now everybody knows.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us. We are here every month here with Welcome Home on Marketing Monday. Be sure to download that report, connect with Chris and Maggie on LinkedIn. And, if you want a demo, if you want to reach out for questions, Welcome Home, their team is so personable and genuine, and I encourage you to get in touch with them and learn anything you'd like to learn. So we'll see you all again next month.
Thanks, everybody.